evening. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April 23rd City Council Public Forum. And we have a couple of hearings and more business to do, so we welcome all of you. And we will begin with, I have piles of paper here. We will begin with the public forum, so I'll just remind everybody of the rules. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward, if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. So just as a heads up, we have 29 people signed up to speak. There is a chair for the second name, so I'll call 2 names, and the second person can wait their turn in that chair, and it all goes a little more smoothly. Did I say 28? No, 29. All right, so first up is Stacy Yates, followed, oh wait, this is very confusing, followed by David Piccioni.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm here as the new chair of the Whitaker Community Council. I live in Springfield, but I took on the position of chair. I became involved with the council because I work for NEDCO, and in the Whitaker neighborhood, we have the Polk Apartments, which are affordable housing for youth aging out of foster care. The reason I took on the chair position is because I saw a lot of opportunity to find some real solutions to homelessness and the other problems related to that. As you know, the Whitaker is adversely impacted by homelessness. And I started going to the meetings, and I started getting really excited about all the potential for real solutions that can happen in that neighborhood. There's great projects already happening, the Emerald Village, and Polk Apartments, and the people on the council talked over and over about how their main goal was providing more affordable housing and maintaining affordability in their neighborhood. And I thought it was realistic to think that I could work with them to be part of the solution, because there is political will on the state level, the county level, and the city level to help address some of these problems. I was so excited about the construction excise tax when it came up, and I was really disappointed that the council is delaying a vote on that. I understand some of the concerns that have been voiced, particularly concerning some of the other taxes and other fees associated with building new housing, but it's just such an opportunity to generate some income to really, the construction excise tax could generate a significant amount of income to start building new units. I'm sure you know that the Eugene School District in 2017 identified 835 homeless students. The Bethel School District identified 550 homeless students. 480 students have been identified as unaccompanied. Those are kids that are out there on their own. The Polk Apartments has 12 apartments. 11, sorry, excuse me. We have 11 apartments. One thing that I do as part of my job function is to respond to 15th night requests for housing specialists, and I talk to young people all the time who have no support and nowhere to go. Looking Glass has a very limited amount of shelter spaces. I know that NEDCO and other organizations are trying to raise funds to house and provide housing for these people. St. Vinny's is opening up their youth home. That's 12 places. Polk has 11. Looking Glass, they have 12 transitional units for young people, and there's 480 young people that need a place to live. Lane County also has the highest rate of people in foster care, and 25% of people exiting foster care will experience homelessness. I come to you today to ask you to reconsider and vote on the construction excise tax.
Thank you. David Piccioni, and followed by Duncan Rhodes.
Hi, David Piccioni. From my own experience of being homeless for about a year, and from my observation, I see that there's on the roughly stated 2 types of homeless situations. One the people, like the word transient refers, they're on the move. They don't need it doesn't do anybody any good to give them a permanent place because they're traveling, they're moving from here to there, and you also have to have people that can be responsible to like not leave the water running and not leave the gas on, be clean, not be loud with the neighbors. So that's one requirement that I would say is important for people for whom we're building permanent housing. But then there's also people that, whether they want to or because they want to. Some people prefer to live outside and sleep in different places every day. And for that, I recommend that there's bathrooms at least every 4 blocks, there should be a public bathroom and public garbage cans so that if people sleep in some alley, they can clean up after themselves and move on. But when it's really cold, there needs to be some kind of setup where it's like maybe a parking lot that's been built into this type of situation where it's covered from the rain and with walls around it so that the cold doesn't come in, heated with room for showers and for with some food provided and other types of care and counseling. I think that in Eugene we need to decriminalize homelessness, and the role of the police should be when there is a homeless person sleeping outside someone's business or in someone's property, and they wake up in the morning and they can't get to their job, and the homeless people don't want to move. That's when you call the cops. But if the homeless people are saying, okay, I realize you got a business here, I'm ready to move on, thank you for letting me spend the night here, that would be perfect. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Duncan Rhodes, followed by Patricia Hine.
I'm Duncan Rhodes. I'm in Betty Taylor's ward, and I am here to talk about some traffic issues. Last week I was taking my grandson to his martial arts class, and we go out 24th westbound to Chambers, and I was doing 25 miles an hour with cruise control, and I had a guy pass me over a double yellow line. I couldn't really take his picture, but we need more cops giving traffic citations. On numerous occasions, I've seen people running red lights long after the light has turned red. This isn't just right after it. I mean, I could have been halfway through the intersection and got nailed. I think we need red light cameras and catch some of these people. And I believe those things would be self-funding. You make the tickets high enough, it's going to pay for whatever the police cost is. Thirdly, I've got a 17-year-old grandson who made a remark to me a few months ago, which I found just amazing. He actually likes the South Willamette Street restriping. He has just started driving, well, maybe 6 months ago. And he thinks it's much safer than it used to be, and so do I. Thanks. I'm out of here.
Thank you. Patricia Hine, followed by Artemio Paz.
Good evening, councilors, Mayor Vina's staff. My name is Patty Hine. I live in the county. I volunteer with 350 Eugene. Since 2014, when this council passed the Climate Recovery Ordinance, or CRO, we've been studying and working diligently to understand how we can help our community meet the reductions of greenhouse gas emissions called for in the ordinance. The reductions are steep, and they are science-based. So we actually have a target that will result in climate that can sustain life. That is 1.5 degree rise in global average temperatures, and a climate recovery plan to draw down the carbon in the atmosphere so it's a safe level of 350 parts per million. And you've been very receptive to our frequent presence and myriad proposals. Thank you. We want to thank you most recently for your swift response to our request to divest Eugene's banking services from financial institutions that have fossil fuel exposure in their investment portfolios. Another thank you. State Treasurer Tobias Reed must have finally read that letter you wrote him back in 2012, urging him to divest Oregon from fossil fuels. It took him 6 years, and that is why I'm here this evening. It's about time. We're running out of time. You know this, and we know this. And I'm here to announce this evening, if you haven't already heard, the public relations, we call that greenwashing, around natural gas, we call that fracked methane gas, is in full swing across the country and the world. The dangerous campaign about so-called clean, affordable, and unlimited supplies of this extraordinarily potent greenhouse gas is threatening our transition to 100% renewable technology. It isn't apparent here in Eugene, but our beautiful part of the country is under siege from the fossil fuel industries. From the mountains in southern Oregon, Coos Bay, to Prince Rupert, BC. Export coal terminals, oil by rail transfer depots, petrochemical refineries, gas export sites in more than a dozen locations, some of the biggest projects of their kind anywhere on the earth. We, the Thin Green Line, are no longer only reacting, we are working to halt all new fossil fuel infrastructure. And as your community partner, we hope you'll indulge us as we press for and continue to work with you to meet our CRO goals. We want to demonstrate to other local governments across North America how local ordinances and policies can secure a better future, one free of the economic whiplash, environmental degradation, and health threats that are endemic to a fossil fuel economy. Local governments can make our country a place where communities write their own clean energy future into law, and we're glad to be working on this with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Artemio Paz, followed by Deborah McGee.
Good evening, Mayor Venus and council members. My name is Art Paz. I live at 86950 Cedar Flat Road. I'm here as the past chair of the State Board of Education, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about science in the public schools and also how that might relate to your climate recovery ordinance. When I look at your climate recovery ordinance and ordinances dating back to 2010 and more recent, yours at 2014, I see many cities nationally talking about aspirational goals. I'd like to see that as you approach your goal in 2020, for carbon neutrality in your operations, 60% neutral in your operations and 40% in green purchases for offsets, that you actually achieve that. And one of the concerns I have, in 2030, you talk about having a carbon reduction in the community of 50%. I think it's important for you to look at partnerships that will help you to articulate issues related to climate change. The state of Oregon adopted in 2014 Next Generation Science Standards. The NGSS standards articulate for the first time climate change issues. No science standards prior to 2014 in the nation had ever articulated climate change. The alignment and coherence of that in developed plans in Oregon, you have environmental literacy strands that were created in 2011. And they also align with sensitivity to climate change issues. In 2010, the state of Oregon modified its social science standards, and for the first time in its standards used the word sustainability. And one of the staff came up to me and told me that he couldn't use the word sustainability. I told her she had to use the word sustainability for us to move into the future. As you look at K through 4, you'll see environmental issues, but when you get to the 5th grade in social science, you'll see the word sustainability. You talk about that framework. I think that it's going to be difficult for you to attain that without relationships to public schools and the classroom environments of science. And NGSS provides that opening and also the environmental literacy standards. I hope that you take that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah McGee, followed by Linda Heil.
Good evening. My name is Deborah McGee. I want to remain constructive and positive, but I'm also frustrated. After leaving the last county commissioners meeting, a City of Eugene employee with a backpack fossil fuel leaf blower was increasing greenhouse gas emissions. For what reason? To blow a leaf or two around the park blocks. We need the community to get on board with the Climate Recovery Ordinance goals. The city must model, teach, and employ and embody the changes by getting rid of fossil fuel tools and vehicles. I know the leaf blowers are a small step, but this is how we start that journey of 1,000 miles, one step at a time. I'm also very concerned about Northwest Fracked Gas wanting to add miles of pipeline to expand their customer base up to the clear-cut forest above Lane Community College. This at a time when the Climate Recovery Ordinance mandates that we reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Burning methane gas is counter to this goal. I also attended the presentation from Northwest Fracked Gas to the Sustainability Commission. It was something called the Low Carbon Pathway. I'm sure you will hear the same presentation, and if you can understand how fracked gas is a low carbon path, I would love to have you explain it. We don't have time. I don't have time now to mention the devastation that fracking causes to communities in Colorado and Utah. Fracking is a violation of human rights. Fracking is a dead-end technology. We need to begin now to discuss how to incentivize and support 30,000 Eugenians getting off fracked gas and onto cleaner energy with eWeb. When my family got rid of our fossil fuel car, we received financial incentives to help us do so. Scientists tell us that burning methane is as bad as coal because it is 86 times more efficient at trapping heat in the atmosphere, and it leaks. It leaks at extraction, it leaks at transportation, it leaks at distribution. I know it is not politically expedient to say so, but the age of burning gas has got to end. The new age of clean, renewable energy is here now. Eugene proudly passed the Climate Recovery Ordinance, a bold step to reduce greenhouse gas emissions so that we can have a livable future. But do we mean to implement this ordinance, or is it just aspirational? I want to end with a quote by Sandra Steingraber. She's coming to Corvallis in a month. She's the author of Living Downstream. It was the first book to bring together data on toxic releases with data from the U.S. cancer registries. This is what she said. We are all musicians in a great human orchestra, and now is the time to play Save the World Symphony. You are not required to play a solo, but you are required to know what instrument you hold and play it as well as you can. You are required to find your place in the score. We must protect what we love. That's what love means. From the right to know and the duty to inquire flows the obligation to act. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Heil, followed by David Gussett.
Good evening. Linda Heil, and I'm in Ward 2, Betty Taylor's ward. And I thank you for scheduling a CRO work session on Wednesday. 350 supporters are here month after month because we so badly want to see the CAP process succeed. Perhaps each of you has read the plan, the CAP plan, several times and has a good understanding of the goals and the planning processes. As I reread the document to prepare these comments, I dreaded one sentence that I remembered from previous readings, and there it was. At the end, the very end of Task 3, engage implementation partners. Quote, the final CAP proposal will only reflect the actions and policies the shareholders or another community entity has agreed to fulfill. Everything hangs on who these shareholders are and how much greenhouse gas reduction they are prepared to make. So here is the proposed process in a nutshell. The city team will survey selected organizations and agencies, the large lever shareholders, regarding their current plans for climate action. Good company will calculate the amount of greenhouse gas reduction these steps would effect over the coming years. And in aggregate, this patchwork of efforts will be the draft Community Climate Action Plan. A community review group representing those most impacted by climate change will then give input on that draft. However, the large lever stakeholders are not obliged to incorporate any suggestions the city or the community review group might give. Two initial adjustments would strengthen the CAP development process. First, a community advisory group integrated into the planning process from start to finish would give equitable community participation in the creation of the plan's action steps. During your work session, look for whether impacted communities have input in the initial decision-making, not merely in a review capacity for a pre-baked plan. Second, the city team could proactively lead the process and set the goals. Proactive leadership would say, this is our goal, here's the greenhouse gas reduction we need to achieve it, let's come up with a plan to do that together. The current design says, show us what you've got, large lever stakeholders, and we'll go with that. During the work session, ask, what leverage is the city planning to use so as to assure that action steps from the large lever stakeholders will produce the greenhouse gas reductions that are required? Finally, please ask for a current list of the large lever stakeholders before the work session. Who they are is crucially important. Look for inclusion of the largest greenhouse gas emitters on that list, and look for organizations like Food for Lane County or the Legal Aid Society, whose constituents often have a very thin financial safety net.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Gussett, followed by Bob Penny.
Mayor Venus, City Council, David Gussett, and I'm in Emily Semple's ward. I'm here to call to your attention an urgent historic preservation issue regarding a publicly owned historic property. The iconic image of the East Grandstand at Hayward Field on the U of O campus is recognized worldwide for track and field events. The building has now been suddenly slated for demolition in 2 months' time, to be replaced by a sterile new venue that will have permanent seating for 12,900 people. With the addition of temporary seating, it will accommodate 30,000 people, which is planned for a one-off event, the 2021 World Outdoor Track and Field Championships. Personally, I see no need to make any major changes to Hayward Field. The university already has a stadium with a seating capacity of 54,000. Wouldn't it be more practical and sensible to convert the Field of Autzen Stadium to multi-use, while at the same time recognizing and preserving the venerated East Grandstand, an icon of our cultural heritage for future generations? The East Grandstand clearly meets all the benchmarks of a building with primary historic significance. But without city landmark designation, it remains unprotected from unnecessary and short-sighted demolition. The City Council, representing the citizens of Eugene, has the responsibility to do all it can to protect this historic building. The historic nomination process for publicly owned buildings in Eugene can only be submitted by either the property owner, the U of O, or by the Eugene City Council. Council needs to take action immediately by recommending the property to the Historic Review Board for city landmark designation. Once the property becomes listed as a city landmark, any planned demolition would automatically trigger a review process. If the City Council does not act quickly, then it will be complicit by allowing the U of O or the U of O's partner private entity to sidestep legal regulations and responsibilities for environmental review. I urge you to take action on this immediately. So basically, we're talking about the corporate profits and the ego of one man versus the greater good and cultural heritage of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Penny, followed by, Kenny Moore, sort of.
Hi. I'm Bob Penny, Mayor of Venice and the council. I live in Bellingham, Washington, but I grew up in the Fairmont neighborhood. In 1977, I helped set a national high school record in the distance medley relay for South Eugene High School. My first race at Hayward Field was when I was 5 years old. At the U of O, I studied architecture, and now I'm a professional builder. I'm here with other supporters of the East Grandstand at Hayward Field whose remarks follow mine and preceded. We have packets of information and a almost completed application for City Landmark. Demolition is slated for mid-June and time's running out. Here's some statements that underscore how we feel. Quotes. More modern, high-tech stadiums continue to break into the track and field scene, but nothing can match the character of Oregon's prized venue. That's from the U of O. Well, I think that the iconic venue is the East Grandstands, which we will maintain intact, and everyone who arrives on campus will see it, and it will be exactly the same. Once and for all, we need to refurbish it. It will have all the charm of Wrigley Field and other iconic venues. Vin Lanana, 2015. It is considered the epicenter of the activity that birthed Blue Ribbon Sports, later Nike, and is widely revered as one of the best track and field venues in the world, almost a religious space. Phil Knight, March 24th, 2018. Now, in contrast, the developer's previous statements to the community, it is historic revisionism to claim that history is best carried forward by removing everything historic from the site, and that it's the people that are important and not the buildings. State law sets out a clear process for review of buildings such as the East Grandstand that have been surveyed as highly eligible for the National Register. The university's own legally required preservation planning document similarly declares the East Grandstand as a primary historic resource and also states that the law must be adhered to. But neither the owner nor the developer has even so much as contacted the State Historic Preservation Office to initiate the required process. Instead, alarmist claims have been issued that denigrate the building's structural integrity, although we've seen no proof and the claims are highly suspect. In affirming this public process, the city can also affirm its vested interest to the citizens of Eugene. It could be a serious black eye to the city to preside over the demolition of this building. As a certified local government, there is even a potential legal obligation to send any demolition application through a proper review. The East Grandstand is a publicly owned, historic qualifying property, and it deserves your protection. Thank you.
Thank you. So I understand this is Mike DeBelee reading from Kenny Moore.
Yes.
You'll be followed by Netta Prefontaine.
My name is Kenny Moore. I am Bill Bowerman's biographer. He coached me to 2 Olympic marathons. One of the great pleasures of my life is meeting with starstruck Nike employees in the East Stands by the President's Box on their heritage tours. There I explained that Nike's corporate success began right there on the track in 1964 when Bowerman introduced jogging from New Zealand. Bill had made us better cushioned shoes for the road. Phil Knight and the new company found a market greedy for them and never looked back. That was the beginning of Phil's staggering generosity to the University of Oregon. A crucial part of Nike's success was its competitive ethos, its just do it insistence that we are all athletes here, all subject to the training effect, no matter our ages. Of course, the most insistent reminder of that truth was Bill Bowerman himself. Accordingly, Nike rightly tried to imbue the company with his spirit. Employees carry a list of moral practices. Number 11, supposedly paramount, is remember the man. When I cast my eyes over the planned transformation of Hayward Field, all I can see is perversely ignorant remembering of the man, the character and wishes of the man. Bill Bowerman would never expose fans to both heat and rains without proper protection. Bill Bowerman would cringe at the height of his honorary tower. It's seeming to signify the track and field program is somehow above our great academic university. Bill Bowerman would look to preserve the East Stands and the President's Box. Bill Bowerman, that great problem solver, would urge us to wait, to reconsider, to rethink what we are all about to do in his name. And I concur. I hereby request that the East Stands be awarded Historic Site designation. Kenny Moore, April 23rd, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Nita Prefontaine, followed by Bill Penny.
Nita.
Nita. There you go. Thank you.
Mayor Venice, council members, and our city manager. I recognize you, and I'm not sure who you are, so I can't recognize you. I'm here today with heavy words, and I feel very, very emotional. I feel like I'm losing my best friend, Hayward Field. At what is Hayward Field? I am talking about the renovation of Hayward Field. If the wrecking ball is going to demolish Hayward, then please let us save our beloved East Grandstands. They are old, but still strong, just like us. We can save them by making them into a historic landmark. Yes, we can. With your help. Those seats have so much history. And you know what? If they could tell stories, can you imagine what they would tell? I bet they could write a book about it. I watched my brother, Steve Prefontaine, run his first race there. That is where my brother found the love of pleased people. That's where his dream came true. He went to the Olympics from there. That's where tears were shed when he didn't win the gold. We are asking to preserve our memories in those grandstands. An application is being considered, and we are asking if you're okay to go before the historical committee. We love our old 1925 grandstand and know that these can never, ever be replaced. Hopefully, we can get this done with every one of you helping us. And may I thank everyone who came tonight.
Thank you. Bill Penny, followed by Peter Thompson.
Mayor Venice, members of the council, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Bill Penny. I live in Lake Oswego. I was born at Sacred Heart Hospital, and I attended South Eugene High, Lane Community College, and the U of O. I saw every race that Steve Prefontaine ever ran at Hayward Field and competed there myself in high school and college. When my running career was over, I switched to another sport, auto racing, that requires that the participants become authorities on sports marketing. The need for large amounts of corporate funding in racing meant that I needed to become an expert in the practice of sports marketing promotion. I subsequently delivered my marketing presentations all along Madison Avenue in New York, as well as many of the top advertising agencies in Boston, Miami, and Los Angeles. Eventually, I became a representative for other racers, the most famous of which was jet car driver and land speed record holder Craig Breedlove. Now that I've told you my qualifications, I wear this T-shirt today from the 2008 Olympic Trials to demonstrate the marketing brand that is the East Grandstand. This iconic outline is recognizable throughout the world. People on the other side of the planet who otherwise would not be able to place Eugene on a map, recognize this silhouette and associate it with Eugene and the University of Oregon, as well as the historic athletic achievements that have occurred at Hayward Field. No other structure in Eugene has this international power of association for the city in the minds of people who have never been here, but who may wish to visit someday. An attempt is being made to circumvent the legal process that would allow the city, its citizens, and this council to consider what would be lost with the destruction of the East Grandstand, historic branding for the city just being one of those elements. One of the primary questions to be answered is one of necessity. There's little debate in considering the university's other sports facilities that the expansion of Autzen Stadium and the replacement of MacArthur Court were absolutely necessary. The demolition of the historic structure that is the East Grandstand, essentially for a single event, is most certainly not necessary. And once it's gone forever. This hallowed place, where a 10-year-old boy comforted his tearful, now late mother at Steve Prefontaine's memorial service, should be preserved and cherished. Our mother, Lee Penny, volunteered her time as chair of the Lane County Planning Commission for many years. Were she to be alive today, she would be firmly in the camp of the preservation of the East Grandstand. As I understand, the location of Prefontaine's death has been declared a city landmark. If a rock by the side of the road is afforded such designation, should an iconic building that was the site of his memorial be preserved as well?
Thank you.
Again, Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Peter Thompson, followed by Scott Kraus.
My name is Peter Thompson, and I am a citizen of Eugene and live in Ward 5. I first visited Eugene in 1973, returning in 1975 for postgraduate studies in biomechanics at the University of Oregon. As a graduate teaching fellow, I was coach to both the women's and men's track and field teams. From 1976, I was the race director of the Nike Oregon Track Club Marathon and was the first international promotions director for Nike. I was on the board of the Oregon Track Club from 1976 until 1986 and was the club administrator and coach responsible for the elite athletes in OTC. I coached post-collegiate athletes here until 1990 when I returned to Europe and worked for the international governing body for track and field, the IAAF, over a 20-year period. Within the IAAF, I was one of 3 senior managers, and while based in Monaco, worked for them in a total of 49 countries. I give you this background because I've been intimately involved with Hayward Field in both competition settings and training settings over a considerable time, and have a perspective and appreciation ranging from local to global. In 2011, I returned to live once again in Eugene, having visited most years between 1990 and 2010. When the IAAF World Junior Championships came to Eugene in 2014, many of the visiting coaches who were friends of mine commented on how much they've been looking forward to competing in this well-known and well-respected historical venue. 2 weekends ago, the Oregon Relays saw 150 high school teams competing in Eugene, a record number from Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, Alaska, and even New Jersey. Another 100 schools were turned away. Why this record number? The athletes had asked their coaches to travel to Hayward Field as it might be the last time they would have an opportunity to compete in it as it is. I was surprised that the young people cared about these wooden timbers and what they represented. Track and field is unlike other sports. When the world comes to Eugene in 2021, we should be aware that the athletes will represent as many as 175 countries of the IAAF's 213 member federations. For probably 140 of these countries, the current configuration of Hayward Field is already an awe-inspiring stadium that they feel comfortable in, within the scale and history. When we host the world in Eugene, our guests should feel like they're being respected and welcomed into a community and space that understands that their homes and stadia may be considerably more modest. Our improved Hayward Field should welcome and inspire with an integrated history, not shun with a bloated, unnecessary opulence and aspirations, bereft of any relationship to the past. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Scott Kraus, followed by Bill O'Brien.
Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Scott Kraus. I grew up in South Eugene, went to South Eugene High School, Lane Community College, and the University of Oregon. I competed at Hayward Field, but more importantly, I have been at Hayward for every major event since 1971. For me personally, it's a special place, but I know it's special for many people in this room as well. Not only spectators, but athletes as well. I wish some of the younger people could be here tonight to speak, because I think even though they may have different attitudes towards Hayward Field and East Grandstands that I do, they probably see it. I see it more as a historical setting, whereas I think these kids see it more as an inspirational setting. Excuse me. So in today's world, I think it's about the athletes. And I think that's one of the reasons they come here, is because of the history of the stands, the track, the men of Oregon, the whole gamut. What I'd like to do at this point, you'll each get a packet of letters and quotes that have been written by certain people. I'd like to read selected quotes out of a few of those. The first one is from Patrick Tyson. He's the head track coach at Gonzaga University, former Oregon runner and roommate of Steve Prefontaine. Pat says, "Historical Hayward Field is an enduring shrine. Nothing like it in the world of track and field. Nothing. My voice, keep the East Grandstands for all to cherish. I'd hate to see kids and those that come visit say," speaking of the new venue, "cool venue now, but wow, nothing like the old traditional Hayward Field." Greg Virgin, 3-time Olympian, 2-time world champion. "I was expecting the West Side grandstands to be torn down or severely remodeled, and maybe for the Bowerman building to be raised to accommodate the expanded West Side Stadium, full or part-time seating requirements. But I did not expect them to raise the historic East grandstands and lose the historical connection to the intimate confines that made Hayward Field such a thrill to compete at for thousands of runners, including myself. Such a thrill to compete at for thousands," I'm sorry, I already read that, "over the past decades." Somebody who's yet to speak tonight? I guess I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill O'Brien, followed by Dennis Abier.
It's good to hear people evoke the name of Prefontaine and people who have actually performed very well in world competition and whatnot. I hope his memory remains forever. There's been a lot of great athletes that have run there. I've gone there many times. I've enjoyed it. Frankly, it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to demolish this, because as far as I understand, in 2018, we may not even get the World Track and Field Championships, because they're I guess the IAAF, they're looking at to see if there has been some, hedging the bets or hedging the bidding process. On a very utilitarian level, this town, the next couple of years, is going to grow astronomically. And as far as I know, there's been no public review process on this demolition. And frankly, in 100 years, if the Olympics ever come to Eugene and you have this city of 1 million people or whatever, you're going to need a lot bigger stadium than 30,000 people. 30,000 people isn't going to cut it. If we think we are so grandiose and we're so great, well, you're not cutting it. You probably want to demolish Autzen Stadium. 55,000, 60,000 people won't cut it. So they want a great football program, demolish the stadium. Get a stadium with 110,000 people.
Thank you. Dennis Cassidy. Oh, wait. Sorry. Dennis Hebert.
Dennis Hebert.
Hebert. Thank you.
That's right there.
Followed by Dennis Cassidy.
Dennis Hebert, Miss Taylor's ward. So I have to come speak here tonight. Some of y'all know why. Some of y'all newbies might not know. But I have appreciation for the city, and they're working with 4J to help save Civic Stadium. That's always appreciated, even though our exuberance was short-lived due to a tragic arson fire. So there went an iconic wooden stadium right there. A lot of the sentiments I'm hearing tonight bring me back to that time when we were meeting in the old circular council chambers where we stayed till 10 or 10:30 with everybody talking about their love for Civic Stadium and how much it had to be saved for the people because of all the memories and all the history and all the tradition that it had. Well, we're down to one now, and that one is the Hayward East Grandstand. And I can't say enough for y'all to try to get down and have a meeting with President Schill or Fit Architecture or whoever it is that's the front runner of this, and have a serious sit down with them and try to make them understand how much Hayward Field East Grandstand is an icon, not just to the track and field world, but to the whole of the community of Eugene. And if the U of O recently, I've been seeing some PR from them about wanting to be more in touch with the community and wanting to be more a part of the community of Eugene as opposed to being a separate entity. I think this would be a grandiose time for them to make a wonderful gesture and to keep the East Grandstand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dennis Cassidy, followed by Bob Hart.
I'm Dennis Cassidy. I'm in Betty Taylor's ward. Council, city manager, thank you. I'm born and raised here in Eugene. I've saved 4 homes from the demolition at the Wrecking Ball at the University of Oregon. And if it was possible at all, I would buy and move the East Grandstand like I've done with these residential homes. But unfortunately, that's not a possibility. And I just want to urge the City Council to do whatever is possible, whatever they can, to work with the University of Oregon to help save the East Grandstand. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Hart, followed by Michael Kimball.
Mayor Venus, council members, I'm Bob Hart, 189 Brayburn. I'm in Betty Taylor's Ward 2. But tonight I'm speaking as the executive director for the Lane County History Museum. I hope all the council members and the mayor are familiar with the letter from Restore Oregon, which very strongly advocates that we consider alternatives to the demolition of the East Grandstand. After all, it's a National Register eligible property. So it goes beyond local significance, goes beyond state significance. It actually, as has been pointing out, goes beyond national significance and has international significance. We are Tracktown, USA. We proudly say that. It's part of our identity. But our identity is also that we knock down historical structures and then we are sorry. The Lane County History Museum has suggested an alternative. The previous speaker said it wasn't possible, but in actuality, the architect who actually moved the stadium in the 80s, Ron Stafford, has looked at the problem. He says you can cut the stadium up and you can move it. And his suggestion is you move it to the old Civic Stadium site that the Eugene Civic Alliance is going to build on. Now, there might be other sites that it could be moved to, but it is not rotten, it is not falling apart, and it could be moved. Bill Penny has filed paperwork with the city for landmark status. The council has the ability to move that forward. At the moment, the application is going nowhere because of what people have spoken about before. It either has to come from the landowner, it has to come from the chair of the planning commission, or it has to come from you all, from the city council. Bill Penny, in that wonderful article back on April 15th, talks about what would PRE have us do. The clock is ticking. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Kimball? Michael Kimball? There we go.
Can we get city staff?
Can staff help? Thank you. And he will be followed by Carolyn Jacobs.
Lucy. My name is Michael Soto. And if a tree is not burned, that is stored carbon. I came here to say congratulations to Eugene. The American Lung Association vindicated all my complaining about soot from the Canadian diesel. I think this is a tipping substance, and I think it would be really great if the city of Eugene went to permit parking instead of metered parking, and maybe you could keep a little closer track on what vehicles are in town. Also, I think that, I've ridden the buses for 40 years, and there's been a little bit of dumbing down in that system. Bus drivers frequently, all the time, waste time lowering the bus for me. And I am blind, I am not crippled. My ears are very stressed out by that beeper. I talked to the people at the Human Equities Department. I thought, would we be able to build community if they turned off the beepers at LT? The thing is, Gary Conley talks about replacing buses when they're not full. The 24 and the 27, I think, are routes that run pretty much strictly in the city limits. If you don't know how bad the diesel smells, try boarding the 24 up at 40th and Donald when it's on its outbound route. And why is it that the bus drivers are not aware of how nasty this stuff is that's coming out of their exhaust pipe? There's no excuse for having a bus sit there idling for 3 or 4 minutes after it's done all the work of climbing all the way up to the top of that 24 route. And Gary Conley suggested, I think it would be a great idea if they used gas-powered vans. Maybe some leasing company could help them with that during the times when that 24 is not loaded with people. I've never been on the 27 that it had more than 3 or 4 people on it. I mean, I really don't know. Excuse me, can't see well enough to count them. But I think that if you listen to NOAA radio, you know that 1 or 2 times a year there's a separate weather forecast for east of I-5 and west of I-5. It is significant because the black sand that's in the diesel coming out the exhaust pipe has the same effect when the sun warms up those pieces of black stuff in the air. And there was a radio announcer in Southern Oregon about the time this stuff came on the market. I think it's been on the market for less than 15 years. And he talked about the persistent high ridge pressure zone. Excuse me, and thank you.
Thank you.
I need to have some help finding.
I'm right here.
Lori Powell, followed by Anand Holtham Keithley.
Good evening. Hi. Glad to be here. My name is Lori Powell. I live in Ward 1, and I'm here with 350 Eugene. grateful to council and city staff for last week's public hearing on compliance with Senate Bill 1051 concerning secondary dwelling units. Please do whatever it takes to make it more feasible for property owners to develop SDUs. These offer one solution to the affordable housing crisis and address selected aspects of our climate crisis. Smaller units leave a lower carbon footprint and support the goals of the Climate Recovery Ordinance. Now, speaking of structures and lower carbon footprint, I've been so taken with the preceding testimony concerning the preservation of Hayward Field's East Grandstand, I've jettisoned 2/3 of my prepared testimony. And I'm going to say this, that demolishing the East Grandstand, I'm going to link the two topics, by the way, Hayward Field and climate change. Demolishing the East Grandstand would be devastating, given its historic place, as has been so eloquently shared tonight. It's also a huge waste of energy and resources at a time when we can least afford it with respect to the CRO. There is so much complex work ahead with climate policy issues as described by Patty Hine, Linda Heil, and Deb McGee. You could consider improved access to SDUs and preserving the East Grandstand as low-hanging fruit. And so I urge you to pick them now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anand Holtham Keithley, followed by Brittany Quick Warner.
Mayor Venus, council members, hey everybody. I'm Anand Holtham Keithley, registered nurse with a degree in science. I live at 389 North Polk in Whitaker and Eugene, Ward 7. Thank you for letting me speak this evening, and thank you for your service to the families of Eugene. You guys are in such a hot seat. I really feel for you. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm only here speaking for myself, even though I work as a nurse to prevent and treat diseases, volunteer at Occupy Medical providing wound care and other nursing treatments, and have worked as a psychiatric nurse at residential care facilities. I have some information for you that may help you in your decisions regarding the importance of affordable housing. According to a health survey recently conducted in the Whitaker neighborhood, more than half of the respondents are concerned about housing. These are only people who already have housing, so please be aware that our housing crisis is getting worse. Both as a registered nurse and volunteering with Occupy Medical, I see how not having housing makes it more difficult to protect one's health. If a person has a chronic illness like diabetes, being able to maintain a proper diet, exercise, and medication practice becomes highly problematic. Having no housing creates an environment where wounds of the feet and legs are common, and the medical need to elevate one's legs can be non-existent, making those wounds worse. The stress and trauma associated with having no housing produces PTSD in a percentage of the population, with the likelihood increasing the longer housing is missing. Adults who have no housing were once children. We see children without housing, and many of those cannot go home because that's where they're traumatized. Without housing, these children will grow up to become adults without housing. Now consider that more than half of our respondents to the health survey are concerned about housing in our society that continually reduces the need for workers. I understand the council doesn't really support the construction excise tax and has no alternative. With the tax reductions over the past decades, we must get funding from those who have it. The CET is a way to do that. I do ask you to reconsider. Waiting until October for staff to return an alternative is not likely to give enough time to create any housing. Global warming is causing more weather extremes, including more heat waves, but also more extremely cold nights. And although the number of nights below freezing will reduce, the nights below zero, which previously had been quite rare, will increase. That kind of cold kills people without housing. Our studies show great concern about housing. I hope you take the brave step of moving forward to create funding needed to care for our Eugene families.
Thank you. Brittany Quick Warner, followed by Mike Cassahoon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brittany Quick Warner. I'm the President and CEO of the Eugene Chamber of Commerce. I'm here tonight actually on behalf of the Eugene and Springfield Chamber. My co-worker Vonnie over at the Springfield Chamber. And we're here on behalf of thousands of our members, employees, and young professionals to thank all of you and thank city staff for the many, many hours of work that went into crafting what we think is a responsible ordinance to allow for ride sharing to come to Eugene and Springfield. So the ordinance as it is currently written, paired with the existing city codes that we already have in place, does what I heard many of you asking the city staff to make sure happens before we allow for ride sharing. The ordinance as it's currently written does three things. The way I see it, the first and most important that I heard was it addresses the safety concerns of bringing ride sharing to our community by requiring local background checks. The way that the ordinance is currently written, paired with the city codes that we already have in place, those local background checks will already happen the way it's currently done. It addresses the insurance concerns, and it ensures safety checks for the vehicles. So the safety aspects of the ordinance, or of the council's concerns, are addressed. Second, it creates a level playing field for our current taxi companies and our TNC companies by requiring these local background checks and making sure that the codes that are currently in place apply to both of those types of companies. And third, it represents an ordinance that will actually allow ride sharing to come to Eugene, which I think is really important. There was a lot of time and effort that went in from city staff, talking and collaborating with the rideshare companies, reaching out to the taxi companies to get to an ordinance that they we both sort of came together on, right? The city had to update our ordinance because it was written decades ago. So there had to be pieces of it that updated in order for us to allow for these technology companies to come and for our codes to actually accommodate them. But we put in place some pieces that we weren't willing to compromise on, and the ride-sharing companies came to the table and said, okay, we can live with the ordinance that's been put forward. So I'm here tonight to urge you to pass the ordinance as it is written. Our members, our community is anxious. I haven't seen as much public support for an issue in a really long time. They're anxious to get these services here to pair with the great bike share that started last week. I feel like we're doing a lot of really good things, and I really just want to appreciate all the hard work that went into crafting this ordinance as it is, and I urge you to vote tonight to implement it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike Cassahoon, followed by Bradley Foster.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Casso, and I'm at 766 Brookside Drive. That is Ms. Taylor's ward 2. I was moved with most of what you have said. I'm living at the U of O, and actually in 1998, when I came to Eugene to visit the track and field, I chose Eugene because of the history of it, obviously, over Stanford, UCLA. I grew up in Fresno and loved it, but I'm not going to go into detail on that. I have a reason that I will stay out of the comment. I'm associated with the University of Oregon, so I'll leave that to the folks, but my hearts are with you. I'm nowhere close to most of you. Obviously, it comes distance runner, but I specialize at 5,000, finished in 2001, and put in somewhere around about 1356. But anyway, it's I know a little bit about track and field, and I'm actually snapping some photos and whatnot with tiers of the stadium, and so I feel your pain. That being said, I want to add to the share rides. I think it's really interesting how slow Eugene moves in certain things. When cities like Portland, even Corvallis, and many other cities in Oregon that are even smaller than us have those systems in place already, I think it's time. I think it's time to have the opportunity for people who are able to get rides and show up in their doorsteps or street corners they're standing in 5 to 10 minutes or less versus waiting for. I have nothing against the taxi drivers and the taxi business, but I think it's 2018. I think competition is good. A lot of the local business are pushing for it. Maybe a lot of people are not coming to speak, obviously, but there's a lot of and just people out there, they want to see share rides in Eugene, being the second largest city in the state of Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, after Portland. And I think I'm pleased to see John this evening participate in this process. I hope you can help to push managing the city and make our city greater than it's already great, but make it greater. I think for you all, please vote and get it going, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Bradley Foster, followed by Matt Sayre.
Hi, I'm Brad Foster. I live in Ward 7, not too far from Claire's place. I feel so greedy. I'm going to ask for three things where everyone else just asked for one, but they all come under one heading. If you read Chris Wigg's op-ed piece in the Register Guard this morning, that's pretty much what I'm going to ask you to do. Let me start with a little story. One of my neighbors, she's a community volunteer. She's my age. She works for a very low income wage, doesn't have a lot of savings, and she was no cause evicted. She had 72 hours to get out. She didn't have the money to find a place. She was injured. That's why her money had run down. She couldn't work the hours she needed to work to keep herself stable. The community came together. We've got soft landinged her, and she may end up in Emerald Village, Eugene, which would be great. And that's because the community made efforts to make that happen. I'm asking you to make efforts to keep people like her from becoming homeless in the future. We've got enough homeless. We could do with contracting that number, not expanding it. So what I want you to do is don't delay on the construction excise tax. Make that happen as soon as possible. We need the funding to build the low-income housing. Those funds can be leveraged to build a lot of units. We need them. We desperately need them. Get the SDU thing going. We need houses. Those are inexpensive houses. We need them. We need to densify as well. As probably, if anyone read my weekly piece, you know that we have lost 43% of our cyclists, 30% of our walkers, 50% of our bus riders. We're going the wrong way. We need to densify and reverse that. And thirdly, gets back to my friend, we need to get rid of no-cause evictions. We need to force landlords to give people a cause for eviction that they have to prove and give them at least a minimum of 3 months to get out. This is ridiculous for someone to have 72 hours, a woman in her 60s with no resources. That shouldn't happen in 2018 in Eugene. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt Sayre, followed by Kimberly Glidden.
Good evening. I'm Matt Sayre, Vice President of the Technology Association of Oregon. I live in Springfield and work in support of economic prosperity throughout Lane County. Today marks the 150th day of our advocacy in support of transportation choice in Eugene, Springfield. During those 150 days, I've seen City Council invest a significant amount of time listening to the public's voice on this topic. In that time, dozens of leaders in the community have provided testimony in support of transportation choice. University of Oregon students have also joined the call for basic rideshare services. In recent weeks, more than 100 students, in fear of their safety, wrote the mayor following a series of armed robberies on campus. Eugene is the only Pac-12 city without rideshare services, and this becomes especially problematic at nighttime for students with limited transportation options. In the past 150 days, I've also seen city staff work diligently to follow council's direction and craft an ordinance that follows Medford's model and ensures public safety. While this should not be about any one company, there was testimony last week that muddied the waters and confused many, including local media. I'm hopeful that city staff have reminded you of the facts and confirmation that the ordinance as written does indeed ensure rigorous background checks. And lastly, I want to remind you of what this is all really about. This is about keeping drunk drivers off the road. Lane County has more traffic fatalities than any other county in Oregon. This is about a city that needs to have these basic amenities to stay relevant to the millennial workforce. This is about choice and letting the people decide how they want to get around. Thank you in advance for your vote in support of the draft ordinance as written by city staff.
Thank you. Kimberly Glidden, followed by Annika Pass.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Glidden. I live downtown.
I'm here to speak about sort of downtown equity. There was a plan that there were going to be homeless camps in every single ward, not just focused in the Whitaker, not just focused in the downtown. When these proposals come up, your residents complain about, oh gee, we have children, we can't have it, it's unsafe for children. Well, the downtown and the WIT both have children. They say, it's not good for our businesses. Well, the downtown and the WIT both have businesses too. The downtown has kind of been a dumping ground. There are dozens of unvetted homeless camps in the downtown. They leave mounds of trash. They pee in the doorways. Saturday night when I was coming home from market, 7 o'clock, there was a guy peeing in the doorway of KLCC. He's within sight of a porta-john, but he's standing there with his dick hanging out, peeing away. That wasn't comfortable. Right now, the library's become a dangerous place. You can't get near the after-hours book drop. If you do get by it, they yell at you for using it. There's a group of maybe 20 homeless people camped out there. It's not a proper place. It's not supervised, or they leave mounds of trash, and you can't use the book drop at all because it's become dangerous. We have children too. Do our children not matter? Do our businesses not matter? This has been going on for a long time. I think we need to spread the wealth out. You know, every ward should have a homeless camp in it so you can get an idea what this is about, because this is not okay. We've got teenagers sitting down at the bus station on the corner there. Don't let people walk through on the sidewalk, smoking cigarettes, smoking weed. This is really unhealthy for the families that have to use the bus, and people like me who don't have a car for many reasons, partly environmental. I haven't had a car for 26 years. My carbon footprint's really small, unlike the people who are driving their cars and polluting the planet. But I have to take the bus. I have to use that corner. I shouldn't have to walk through clouds of cigarette smoke or clouds of marijuana smoke. Neither should the families using the library or the students going over to the atrium. There's also a problem downtown with drug dealing. There's quite a lot of it going on. Every Saturday, just outside here on the Courthouse Plaza, there's open drug deals all day long. And that's not okay. It's bringing a lot of criminals. It's only a matter of time before the gangs move in on it. You've made the downtown unsafe. We have families, and the families in the downtown matter too. And our businesses down here matter too, and it's hurting everyone's income and making more poverty. And you need to start doing something about it, bringing them to your neighborhoods or even to your houses. Let them pee in your doorway. Let them shoot up in your bathrooms. You know, tired of the library's bathrooms being used for a shooting gallery.
Thank you. Annika Pass, followed by Lance Deal.
Hi, my name is Annika Pass. I live in Ward 7 in the Whitaker area. I want to talk to you guys today about some of the issues that I've seen, not just in the Whitaker, but around Eugene in general with housing and affordable housing in particular. In my time in Eugene, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of friends, peers that have been priced out of their homes or have seen substantial rent increases. I had a friend who at 6 months pregnant got kicked out of her house for a no-cause eviction and was laid off at the time and really struggled to find affordable housing. I've seen friends that have worked at in professional fields that have lived in houses for years that have been kicked out of their houses for no cause so the rents could be raised and get more money. And this is all not unique to the people that I know. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. We're in the middle of an era where a lot of the people in Eugene are facing rents that are beyond the 30% that should or is considered an affordable housing expenditure. So I want to encourage all of you guys to vote on the construction excise tax. I know that it's a very small percentage that individuals could go to the funding of affordable housing for individuals, not just to individuals who are homeless or at severely low income, but to just working class families, to college graduates, to people who don't have the capital to invest in long-term or really sustainable housing. Like I said, this is an issue. It's very important, and I appreciate you guys letting me talk today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance Deal, followed by Tom Halferty.
Mayor Venus, Council, thank you for listening. I'm here to speak about the Hayward renovation and the East Grandstands. I too have a sentimental attachment to the East Grandstands. I competed as a collegiate at Hayward Field where my parents sat in those stands. I trained on them on my way to an Olympic silver medal in the hammer throw as I was a resident here from 1985 until now. As a coach, I watched the Ducks, my Ducks, win the Pac-10s in 2007. As the director of the venue, I've painted, repaired, policed, and hosted groups from all over the world around those East Grandstands. So I understand holding on to memories. If I hadn't have been there just about every day since 1985, I might be a bit more wistful about those memories. I kind of think of it like my first car. That 1965 bright red Volkswagen Bug was a magnificent piece of engineering and safely carried me back and forth from Bozeman to Casper, Wyoming in all kinds of weather. It served me very well as a young man. As an older man, my needs and responsibilities have changed, and the old red Rocket, although dear to my heart, would no longer serve my needs. The East Grandstands have served generations of avid track fans. They're a fantastic space for high school teams to camp and diehard pole vault and discus throw fans to watch those events. But for the average modern sports fan, it is outdated and tired. Some of my older friends are unable to attend meets anymore because of the lack of basic modern amenities. As an athlete and a coach, I used the tried and true basics, but we never stopped striving for excellence by looking toward the future and imagining how great we could be. The new renovation is not for a single event. In the design phase, the U of O team and the NC2A championships were first and foremost in all of the design decisions. The East Grandstands is in a continual state of repair. It's wood, it's Oregon, it rots. Tracktown is not known worldwide for the East Grandstands. We are known as Tracktown for the meets that we put on, from the Prefontaine to the NC2As to the World Junior Championships and to the World Championships in 2021. In that mindset, the East Grandstand could be considered a liability and not an asset. The new design of Hayward Field is simply the best track and field facility in the U.S. and possibly the world. It serves the young men and women. It will serve the young men and women of the U of O at an unprecedentedly high level for 355 days a year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Halferty, followed by James Tice.
Hi, I'm Tom Halferty. I live in Betty's ward. Southeast Neighbors, we also have a homeless camp in the Southeast ward. I'd like to encourage the other wards to also do the equity thing. I'm here to speak, as many have, for the saving of the East Grandstand. I think if it turns out the university does tear it down, I'd like to see it designated nonetheless as a landmark, and you could just have the building itself as the landmark, excuse me, and not count the ground or the foundation. That way you could move it, and it would still, it's a symbolic gesture. But to label that as a landmark, it'd be nice to see the university incorporated into a redesign with the West Grandstand in the Bowerman building. I know they don't like the fact that the wind kind of makes it so some of the the records are not counted because it's more than 7 miles an hour, I think. But anyway, it could, as Bob Hart mentioned, could be moved over to the civic site. And I've heard another estimation, instead of cutting it in pieces, if they actually dismantled it, timber by timber, take about a month, and it'd take about 4 or 5 months to rebuild it over at the civic site. So anyway, I'm in favor of that. Also, I'd like to see the LCC downtown building become a homeless center like Portland and San Francisco are doing, where you combine the various services. It's a big enough building. You could have offices of all the different social services there, and bring folks, kind of like the country fair at the end of the evening, where you have the sweep, bring folks down to this homeless shelter. Well, that's just an idea. Thanks.
Thank you. And our final presenter, James Tice.
Thank you for giving me the last word. Mayor Venice, councilors, I live in Eugene. I'm in Alan Zelinka's ward. And where I live, I hear the crowds roar from Hayward Field at every event, and I certainly enjoy that. I'm an architect. I teach at the University of Oregon. I'm a professor of architecture. I lived in Eugene since 1991. There are many eloquent words said this evening about the grandstand, the East Grandstand. From an architect's point of view, I think it's a beautiful, authentic Northwest piece of architecture. I remember hosting an Italian architect, a Pritzker Prize-winning architect, Aldo Rossi, 35 years ago, and his favorite building on campus was not Johnson Hall, it was not the library, it was the East Grandstand in its beauty and wonder. But what I'd really like to talk about is some facts, because as an architect, I think it's important we all know this. So with 30,000 seats, or that's one outside estimate, that would require by the city ordinance 4.5 for every 4.5 spaces, there would be one car required, one parking space. That's 6,666 vehicles. That equals 2,133,330 square feet. And I thought, my God, I misplaced the decimal point. I did something wrong. No, 2,133,330 square feet, which equals 50 acres of parking. 50 acres of parking. Now, I also calculated that if we used the Pioneer Cemetery for the parking, that would only be 4.5 stories. 4.5 stories on the Pioneer Cemetery, taking up the whole space. I'm not proposing that. But it gives you some idea of the magnitude of what is involved. Why does that venue have to happen in that place when Autzen Stadium and that space is available, also with its parking? To place a 30,000-seat stadium in the heart of the campus, in the heart of our community, is insane. It really makes no sense. This project is promoted by my university as a logical, forward-looking way to go. It's not.
Thank you. Thank you. And that closes our public testimony. I have one counselor in the queue. Anyone else? Okay, Counselor. So Counselor Zelenka, Counselor Ye,
Taylor,
Counselor Taylor, Counselor Clark, Counselor Semple. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Take it away, Counselor Zelenka.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify something on the CET. That vote was 8-0 to have the staff bring back a package of measures to increase affordable housing in Eugene, not just one measure. It was not a vote against the CET. It was about the package. I support the CET, and I believe so does the majority of the council, and I believe it will be part of a strong package that of measures that we bring back to create more affordable housing and missing middle housing. The rest of you, thank you all for coming out tonight. I share your concerns about the preserving the U of O East Grandstands at Hayward Field. It is truly an iconic structure designed by Ellis Lawrence, actually, and steeped in history and memories. It really is a brand. It's even got its own T-shirts. I think it would be a shame to tear it down. I'd be happy to put forward a motion to have the City Council consider submitting an application for historic status. I know time is of the essence. My understanding is that historic status alone is insufficient to prevent the demolition of the grandstands, but at least we could talk about it, let the process play out, and let the community discuss the options. One option, I talked to the executive director of Eugene Civic Alliance today, and they said they'd be glad to entertain moving the East Grandstands to Civic Site, and they said it would be a perfect fit. They actually looked at it and determined it would fit perfectly. I don't know if that's even possible, or I know it wouldn't be cheap, but maybe the donors of the new stadium might view that option as very favorably. I've also heard a great deal from the people around Hayward Field, because I represent them on the City Council, about their concerns about the traffic and the parking and the noise associated with a much bigger stadium. And I would also hope that, should the new stadium go forward, that while the U of O amazingly doesn't have to do a conditional use permit for a project this size, it basically just has to do a building permit, that they would work with the neighbors to develop a plan to mitigate the traffic and adequately deal with the parking. And I talked earlier to Matt Roberts, and he assured me, from the U of O, and he assured me that that was their intention, to engage the neighbors in moving forward with a plan around parking and traffic and noise.
Thank you. Councilor Ye.
Thanks. Thank you to everyone who came tonight to speak about the Hayward Field Grandstand. By being here tonight, you're demonstrating how historic preservation is one of the values we have as a community. More than 40 years ago, we created our own historic review board as a way of ensuring our goals of preservation were accomplished. Where I work at the Lane County History Museum, we explain to people that it isn't the monetary value that often makes an artifact worth saving. It's the story behind that object. Historic preservation of a structure gives the community the opportunity to take a story from their past and interpret that for future generations. The positives and the negatives are presented so the community can both celebrate and learn. The East Grandstand at Hayward Field has a lot of stories we don't want lost and forgotten. There are many ways to accomplish historic preservation, but it is clearly a historic structure and at the minimum deserves a conversation about the options available for preservation. There are many good options that could be explored. Whether the grandstand remains, is moved to a new location, or parts of it are reused. None of those can happen without a thoughtful conversation. And while I respect the university's right to grow and manage its facilities, this structure has so much personal significance for so many in our community. I encourage them to listen and join in finding ways to celebrate that significance. Any good historian will tell you that you don't interpret history for a community, but with a community. And I hope that's the plan for the U of O's proposed Hayward Museum. The city manager has said earlier tonight that he'll be bringing back some additional information to council about our options. My meeting with some staff today, it seemed clear that perhaps the historic landmark designation wouldn't be enough to stop demolition. So I'm interested to see what the city manager will bring back. And I'm wondering if you can't look at ways we could ensure the U of O is consulting with the State Historic Preservation Office, as is required by the Oregon State Statute concerning historic properties, before any city permits are issued, if that's an option at all. Actions we need to take before, so that the community has an opportunity to engage with the U of O and to see if there are any viable actions before a hasty demolition ends any chances for preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Taylor.
Oh, thank you. Three things that came up tonight, which I have tried to do something about. Leaf blowers, I did get a work session once upon a time, but didn't succeed in getting them banned. I do think it's pretty bad that the city is using them. It's a bad example. I have suggested the LCC building, the old LCC building, as a homeless shelter. Suggested it at a city club meeting once and got a lot of support for it, but nothing's happened there. But the big deal tonight is the grandstand, and I did ask at the earlier council meeting this afternoon if we could do anything, and I think the answer I got was that we couldn't, but except get information, which doesn't preserve it. I hope that if Councilor Zelenka said he will make a motion, I would certainly vote for that motion if he makes it. If there's anything we can do, I think we should do it. And I think that leaving it where it is the preferable thing. There have been a lot of sensible things said here tonight, and I think we should listen and do anything that we can. And I hope the president of the university is listening too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say first and foremost, thanks to everybody who came and spoke. Thank you to all of the high school students who were in the room tonight. Most of them, as I look around, I think are gone, but there were probably at least a couple of dozen high school kids here tonight who were here for an education on civics, and you all gave it to them. Good job. Excellent work. I think if they were going to be here for a night to hear some things, boy, this was quite a good night for that to happen. So, good job. I'm not sure how I feel about what I've heard here. I have quite a close connection to the stadium myself. Right across the street from the stadium is a dorm called Clark Hall, and right next to that is Allen. And then right behind that is DeCoux, where I lived for a year. When I graduated from the University of Oregon. And I had the chance to be the stadium announcer for the Special Olympics for 4 years. And so I spent a lot of time up there. And it has a very special place in my heart, too. But I miss, where's Dennis go? I miss Civic Stadium, too. And especially taking my kids there for a ball game. So I don't know how I feel about this, because I understand what the university's trying to become, and I wonder what my kids, if they were to attend there, or someone else's kids who want to compete at that level, what they deserve. I don't know. I'll be interested to hear more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Semple.
Thank you. I want to reiterate what Councilor Zelenka said about the CET. Nobody up here has said no to the CET. Well, except for, it was a unanimous vote that we wanted to look at the whole package. The ordinance that we had been looking at, if we had approved the CET, was not going to take effect for a year. So we wouldn't have gotten any money from it for a year. We can do that by looking at everything else that conjoins, figuring out the best solution, and still get CET money within a year. So please don't panic. We're working on it, and we do hear you. Hayward Field. I have yet to sit in the grandstand, but I've lived here 32 years, and it is iconic. My biggest problem with the new stadium is it's too big. The university is for the students and also for the citizens of the city. But first, it's for the students. It's for all the students, not just the athletic students. The new stadium would take up part of the rec fields next to the student rec center. So the 2021 World Games for a couple of weeks are more important than intramural health of our students? I don't think so. So that's really, I have two concerns. The end of an iconic stadium that matters to a lot of people, and taking away valuable fields from a much bigger population of citizens. Do we need to have such a huge track for the rest of the years after the 2 weeks? I don't think so. If we do, let's put it over at Autzen or, PK Park. That's where we put our big athletics. Remodel Autzen for this summer. It's got to be cheaper than building a whole new venue. I love the idea of taking the grandstand to Civic. I think that's pretty cool. I'm fine with it staying where it is, but I'm not fine with it getting huge. The problem is, that has nothing to do with me. I care, but it's not our decision making. I would support looking at it from a historical view, but I just want to point out, where are we really going? We need to think about that too, not just 2021. And thank you, everyone, for coming. It's really, really important that we hear from you, because otherwise we don't know what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? So I know Councilor Zelenka wants to come back. I just want to also thank all of you for testifying, and I do find the conversation around Hayward timely and compelling, and we do all love that structure. I am interested also in hearing what some of the other options might be about taking parts of it. I do understand that the plan at the university in that tower is that there will be a 6,000 square foot museum there. So the current plan is that they would take some pieces from Hayward and they would be on display in that museum. So that is the operating plan from the university, but it would be interesting, again, also to know the potential for moving it to Civic or other things. So thank you for that testimony. And Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, I'd like to move to schedule a timely work session for the council to consider an application for the historic status of the Hayward Field East Grandstand and other options.
Thank you. Second.
Okay, any further? Everybody ready to vote on this? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's universal. Okay, thank you very much. And I think that closes the public forum. Thank you all. Okay.
Yeah, has everyone? All right.
Give it to them and they will make sure everybody gets it.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ready to roll into consent calendar?
Name some stuff.
We probably need to ask folks.
And- Yeah, let them. Yeah. So,
Still meeting.
folks
Could
in
we
the
ask
audience,
folks to leave the room?
We still have a meeting to do.
excuse us. We actually have a continuing meeting, city council meeting, so if you want to stay, you're very welcome to listen to our ongoing deliberations. Otherwise,
New police chief
it'd be great to keep it quiet. Thank you.
Skinner's Butte's already named for him. If he dies, we don't have to.
Okay.
Let's just go.
All right. Consent calendar.
I'd like to pull item B, please, Mayor.
All right. We'll pull item B. And
I move to approve the consent calendar minus item B.
Second.
all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that passes. Want to discuss item B?
Yes, I pulled the tentative working agenda because there's an amended part. I would like to make a motion to amend the tentative working agenda. Before her, George Polling and I worked for the last couple of years on some projects in North Eugene with the Northeast Neighbors Neighborhood Association, and certainly since she's been here, Jennifer's been Councilor Ye, excuse me, at this table, we do that differently. I apologize. Councilor Ye and I have been working very hard with the folks with Northeast Neighbors and with staff to work on a couple of projects, and we have already scheduled May 16th to talk about those things here at the table. But as a part of the work staff has been doing with the Neighborhood Association too, we want to make a motion to kind of direct staff what to bring back at that May 16th meeting. So I would move to approve the tentative working agenda with the amendment to direct the city manager to include resolutions in the council packet for the May 16th council work session regarding the Northeast Neighbors SDC credit proposal, so that council could choose to take action at the May 16th meeting.
I second.
And I would just say, to speak to that this is provided to me by Sarah as a way to make sure that we've done our proper thing to direct them to bring back specifics as the staff have promised the Neighborhood Association we would do. This has to do with an ordinance that council passed 2 years ago with the MUPTI changes that dealt with SDC credits for multi-units that were being fixed. And we passed a process that said you make an application to council when a neighborhood association works with a developer. They sent us that application about 1.5 years ago. So we're going to finally actually act on it if we can.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Emily, Councilor Semple?
Could you just flesh it out a little bit about what questions you want to make sure we have at that session?
It's not questions so much as what we're directing staff to do is to come back with specific proposals to tell us what we would need to act on in order to be able to say yes to that request and that application if we want to.
So it's for that one topic, that one application?
That's correct.
I thought maybe you had a big list, and I wanted to know the list.
Just that one thing for the May 16th meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, ready to vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, thank you. Great. So now we are about to open a public hearing. And I'll let the manager introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is on the public hearing and possible action to rename Westmoreland Community Center. On April 11th of this year, the council voted unanimously to direct me to schedule a public hearing to consider renaming Westmoreland Community Center in honor of Dr. Edwin Coleman. The same day, the council unanimously voted to amend the City of Eugene naming policy to improve clarity and remove inconsistencies within the policy. Dr. Edwin Coleman passed away in January 2017. Dr. Coleman was an educator, musician, community activist, and family man. He was a leader in Eugene advocating for human and civil rights for more than 50 years. This proposed action is in alignment with the City Council's commitment to supporting equity and inclusion for underrepresented communities, specifically the African American community in Eugene. I recommend the renaming of Westmoreland Community Center as the Dr. Edwin L. Coleman Jr. Community Center in honor of Dr. Edwin Coleman. We have provided a revised resolution and motion that recognizes Dr. Coleman as a junior rather than senior, as was previously provided to you. This clarification was pointed out in an email from Dr. Coleman's son earlier today.
Great. Okay, we have a couple of folks signed up for a public hearing. I'll just remind you of the rules. Those wishing to speak must submit a completed request to speak form prior to the beginning of the public hearing. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. You will have 3 minutes to comment. There are lights on the timer. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. We have 2 speakers. The first is Paul Biondi, followed by Betty Snowden.
Thank you, everyone. Your Honor, the Mayor, and also City Council, City Attorney, and also City Manager, thank you so much. I hope you guys have comfortable chairs. Yeah, I sit up here and watch you all. It's like watching if you invited several dozen relatives to Thanksgiving at your home, and everybody had an opinion, and you're trying to make dinner, you know? So you guys are amazing. Thank you. Dr. Coleman was my mentor, and a great musician. Played with the likes of Cal Tjader and also Willie Bobo, just to name a few, and made his home in this town, raising a bunch of other great talented musicians. And he's a major part of the U of O. And he's had me at that building over there to play, because he spent many time over there servicing and donations and anything he could do. So I've sat in that little lobby area trying to squeeze in, really, and with what little room we had, and we'd play for an event, and his heart and soul was there, and his heart and soul was in this town. He made such a major difference for so many people, and he's encouraged a lot of people to go on and do great things, and I hope he's inspired some of you up there also. City manager, I don't know if you ever got a chance to meet Dr. Coleman, but he would know that there is a way. His heart and soul was also at the University of Oregon track and field. He'd want to save that stadium. We get older, we figure out new ways to brace things as they get older. Heck, I use Grecian in my hair. It happens. There's ways you can save that building, and if it means moving it to another iconic landmark, let's check those possibilities. I know Dr. Coleman's looking down and saying we can do it as a city. We can make it happen. Have the new stadium. Have it outside of town where it won't congest traffic and won't congest the college. And I know Dr. Coleman would want you all to explore every possibility, just as he did as making things happen in our town and clearing the way for getting rid of this color thing and just being people and humans. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this town. Thank you so much for supporting the music scene. Don't forget Rhododendron Festival in May in Florence. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Snowden.
Hello. My name is Betty Snowden, Eugene, Oregon, Betty Taylor's ward, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak on tonight. To our Mayor, Venus, and the City Council, I want to thank you for considering renaming the buildings for both Andrea Ortiz and Dr. Coleman. My 3 minutes is not enough time to praise these two special people. And as you heard Paul here tonight doing the same, I think we should look at the resumes of both Dr. Coleman and Andrea. Dr. Coleman and Andrea are joined together in leadership with Dr. King. He was born in January, and they both died in January. We should really think about that and the impact that that has. It is more than fitting to honor their lives, work, contributions to this community by renaming the buildings for them. They are worthy of this honor, and we as a community, we show respect and admiration for their good works and leadership. This shows diversity is not only just talking, but finally we're beginning as a community to put it in deed. So I think that that would be wonderful, and to think about what this would mean to the young people growing up in this community, people of color, young people of color, to walk by the Dr. Coleman building, to walk by Andrea Ortiz's park. You don't know what that would do to them and further generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that closes our public hearing. And any comments from council? I have Councilor Clark in the queue and Councilor Zelenka. Okay, take it away.
I appreciate both of our speakers today. I also, I will look forward to voting yes on this. I wanted to say thank you to Councilor Evans for our last discussion on this. I had a real problem with the idea of waiving the rule, and I thought we should amend the rule, find a better way to do this, because it wasn't smart to do that until he reminded me that we waived the rule for the Suzanne Arley Park, and I voted for that. And I think that the process of government and the point of America is to get better as we go. And I think there are too many people that sit at tables like this that are afraid to admit when they're wrong. They're afraid to learn something new and say, hey, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to try to reach towards getting better. And so I appreciate Greg helping me recognize that thing that we could do better, and that how I could think about this in a way that was more just. And so I'm happy to vote in favor of it.
Okay, Councilor Zelenka.
I too would like to thank Councilor Evans for bringing this forward. I got to meet Dr. Coleman once or twice, and he's certainly deserving of this honor. It's the totality of someone's life that you honor, and he certainly worked for a very long time for diversity and equity and non-discrimination in this community. So I'd be proud to support this. And Paul, it would be super cool if you had a picture of Ed Coleman playing in the Westmoreland that we could put up on the wall next to his plaque. If you could dig one of those up, that would be awesome.
Okay, ready for a vote? We'll put a motion on?
That's what I'll do. I move to adopt Resolution 5224, renaming the Westmoreland Community Center as the Dr. Edwin L. Coleman Jr. Community Center in honor of Dr. Edwin Coleman.
Second.
All right, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it passes. Thank you very much. Congratulations. That's great. And now we are ready for the second public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is similar, and it's a public hearing and possible action to name an unnamed park for Andrea Ortiz. At the same council meeting in April, you voted unanimously to direct me to schedule a public hearing to consider the naming of an unnamed park located near the corner of Royal Avenue and Elizabeth Street as Andrea Ortiz Park in honor of Andrea Ortiz. Andrea passed away on January 16th, 2017. She was a local Latina leader, equity advocate, friend, colleague, and former city council member. The proposed action is in alignment with the City Council's commitment to supporting equity and inclusion for underrepresented communities, specifically the Latino community here in Eugene. And I also recommend naming the unnamed park located near the corner of Royal Avenue and Elizabeth Street as Andrea Ortiz Park in honor of Andrea.
Thank you. So I'm opening the public hearing. We have 2 speakers, the same rules. You have 3 minutes, you filled out a form, and I'll call your name. So our first speaker is Steve Tarver, followed by Carmen Urbina. Steve Tarver? No? I guess Carmen, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor Venice, City Council, and City Manager. I said I was not going to cry, but that's not working. I live in Ward 5, and this is an amazing and beautiful theme tonight that we're hearing, which is legacy, from Steve Prefontaine to Hayward Field. But what I'm here to talk to you all about is the legacy of Andrea Ortiz and Dr. Edward Coleman. We're talking about 90 years of work, love, mentorship, both as I'm thinking about what they've taught me. It's about always thinking about the greater good of our community and loving our community unconditionally. They both, I have blessing of calling them my friends and my mentors. And I also, a gentle reminder that I'm here representing Educación en Justicia para la Raza, GLAD, Grupo Latinoamericano de Acción Directa, Latinx Alliance, which is a coalition of Huerto de la Familia, Centro Latinoamericano, Downtown Languages, the Migrant Education Program, and Integration Network, which represents more than 100 residents of Eugene, actually thousands. And I'm here once again to ask City Council to move forward the City Council Evans proposal to rename Westmoreland Community Center after Dr. Coleman and the underdeveloped, Royal Elizabeth Park after Andrea Ortiz. They were amazing. They loved this community. And we're talking about an African-American leader and a Latina leader, but they cared about families, children, legacy, and the greater good of all our community. And let's not forget that. And I also want to say thank you to Councilman Evans for your leadership and your courage, because as you put forth two leaders in our community, I know the letters that you've received, because they happen to be an African-American leader and a Latina leader, of hate that you have received is saddening. But that is why our community rises. And that's why our community is Eugene, because this type of, I won't say the word, this type of, what can I say? We don't accept that, because we are about the greater good. Thank you.
Thank you. And that closes the public hearing. Any comments? Councilor Saret? Take it away.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't say it any better than what Carmen just shared with us. But I just wanted to, again, acknowledge the fact that Andrea's leadership and dedication to community very much inspired me when she suggested that I might be a legitimate successor to her. And I have strived to sit in her chair and to honor her legacy. And I don't think I can come anywhere close to what she did for this community. But I am very thrilled to have the opportunity to take this vote and to dedicate a park in her name. And I also want to thank Councilor Evans for bringing this forward and for pushing us to make the changes necessary so that we could have this vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, ready for a motion?
I move to adopt Resolution 5225, naming the unnamed park located near the corner of Royal Avenue and Elizabeth Street the Andrea Ortiz Park in honor of Andrea Ortiz.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. None opposed? Thank you very much. That passes. So that closes that. And now we are ready for the next item, potential disposition of East 3rd Alley property.
Thank you, Mayor. And this item is an opportunity for council to discuss an offer from a private party for the purchase of a small segment of land adjacent to the Ferry Street Bridge. Per council's direction, we are bringing this forward to discuss the appropriate disposition process, and Amanda De Sousa will take us through this conversation.
So I have a short presentation. So as John said, this is, we're here to discuss an offer from a private party for the purchase of a small segment of land adjacent to Ferry Street Bridge.
Very small.
At the November 27th, 2017 work session, Council approved a process for the disposition of city-owned property shown here. The process states that if we receive an unsolicited offer, the city manager will evaluate the merits of the offer, and Council will then provide direction on the disposal process, which is why we are here today. To provide some context, the site in question is an odd-shaped piece of land adjacent to the Ferry Street Bridge. The site is 1,270 square feet and is located between 3rd and 4th Avenues at the intersection of East 3rd Alley and Mill Alley. Jeff Wilson Charles, a local property owner, approached the city with a proposal to purchase the property. He owns all the adjacent properties, including Rye Restaurant, the Watershed Building, and the in-progress mixed-use redevelopment of a bungalow just south of East 3rd Alley. Mr. Wilson Charles is also interested in seeking an alley vacation of both East 3rd Alley and Mill Alley, both of which would require council approval, and he has not yet submitted either of those applications yet. This is a view of what the site looks like now from Mill Alley facing south. The dotted yellow line shows the outline of the proposed area. The property is currently unmaintained and has overgrown greenery. It's a remnant of several pieces of land that were acquired for road improvements in 1953. It has not been designated as a legal lot or tax lot, nor has it been zoned for any development. The property isn't right-of-way, and Public Works does not have any use planned for the site. Council options today are to direct the city manager to negotiate deal points to bring back to council, select a different process for disposition of the property, or choose not to move forward at this time. And the city manager's recommendation is to move forward with negotiating deal points for the sale of the property. Available for any questions.
Great, thank you. Councilor Syret?
So I didn't look at this particular item before we started, and I don't know if this is an issue, but I might need to declare a potential conflict of interest, so I'll just put it out there and the city attorney can advise me. But I have a small interest in Rye Restaurant as my husband works there. And the development of this property could have, a positive impact on their business. So I just don't know if that's a potential conflict of interest, but I'll put it on the record.
So at the most, it would be a potential, so you can continue to participate.
Okay.
Now that you've announced it.
Great, thank you. In that case, I would support this. I don't have intimate knowledge of the property owner's plans for the site, but I do know the work that has been done on that property, the Watershed Building in particular, has been very positive. It's a very positive development, and I suspect that the property owner would put this piece of land to good use.
Councilor Semple.
Thank you. It's a very small piece of land. I don't imagine anybody else is going to want to buy it. It does have overgrown greenery on it, but it also has trees. It's like 4 trees, and we know how people get upset about trees. They're really valuable. So I do have just a wonder of what is planned for it, and will the trees get cut down?
As of right now, I don't know, other than using it to consolidate services since he owns all his other properties. But if we do bring back deal points, we can talk to him about the trees and what his plans for those are.
I'm not saying I would go against it for 4 trees, but I do feel an obligation from my tree-loving friends to ask about their lives. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor. I'm sorry.
I think we should, if we're selling any property, we should give other people a chance to say whether they are interested or not. And I have objected before when we are asked suddenly to sell something and no one else knew it was for sale. And I do think the 4 trees are important.
Okay. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. The bungalow redevelopment, that's the old Eugene, that's not Eugene Moving and Storage, isn't it?
No, it's across the street.
I'm looking at this map incorrectly, aren't I?
You're across the street.
It's an old house.
It's a cool old house.
Yes.
Okay.
We boarded up with a foundation.
I asked for that work session on managing the the process for how we dispose of property. But this came to us as a request in order to move forward with a project. I guess in this particular, do I have that correct? It came to us as a request?
Correct.
I have the same feeling that Betty does about doing the most efficient thing with something like this. At the same time, I want to see something good move forward, but I don't know enough about that particular project at this time to be able to make that determination. So the best outcome seems to me to be that we move in an interim step. I don't know. I'll think about this. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
I most of the time agree with Betty on the point that we should see if anybody wants to buy a piece of property other than the person who proposed it. But in the interest of real practicality and efficiency here, this piece of land, maybe you could bring up the picture of it. This piece of land is unvaluable to almost anybody.
How would you know?
Except for the people that are there, because it's just too small to do anything with. So in practical terms, we could go through the steps of, seeing if anyone wants to do it and do all that time, but I think this is crying out for an exception to that rule, because it's just not a very feasible process for me to, for us to go through all of that steps to then find out we're going to do what we're going to do right now. So I'm in favor of letting the city manager bring back deal points.
Okay, Councilor Pryor.
Yeah, one of the reasons we created a process where it comes back to council is so that we can consider them on a case-by-case basis and not just try to create a one-size-fits-all policy. So that I can look at this and say, on this particular case, he owns all the surrounding property, it's a weird shape, it's small, I don't think anybody else would really want it. If it was a full-size, self-contained lot, then sure, I would say the process is definitely what the process needs to be. So case by case, in this case, sure, I think we should go ahead and negotiate terms.
You told me there were no no-brainers.
That's a technical term.
It's actually not.
Okay, any other comments about this?
Yeah.
Okay, are we
Worth immense amounts.
are we ready for a motion?
It seems tonight for exceptions, so I guess we will. I move to direct the city manager to work with Mr. Wilson Charles to negotiate deal points for sale of the 1,270 square feet city-owned property at Third Alley for future council consideration.
Second, but
Because you have to.
Second, you may speak to it if you wish.
I don't want to vote to do this tonight, and according to our rules, if one person doesn't want to, we don't.
That's only with a hearing, when we didn't have a hearing tonight.
No,
Can you clarify the rules for us, please?
I think you're speaking to when there's an ordinance being proposed to be acted on at one meeting, the same meeting as a hearing, and the charter requires unanimous consent of the council in that particular circumstance.
We didn't have a hearing.
Because this is not an ordinance.
There's not an ordinance and there wasn't a public.
I do think that we should wait, though, but if.
This isn't the sale, this is just bring back deal points.
Process.
It's just start.
We're not deciding to sell it right now, right?
No, what we'll do is we'll go work with Mr. Wilson Charles and Charles Wilson and
Wilson Charles. Last name.
Sorry. Wilson Charles around deal points for the particular piece of property. We'll bring it back to you with some recommendations at that point.
Okay, I'd like to know what it's connected to. I see that it's small and it's weird, but weird shaped. But what are the connections? I'd like to know. Thank you, that's all.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't mean to be disagreeable with my colleagues, but I don't think it is anywhere near cut and dry. For example, I'm not suggesting they would do so here, but because there are likely a number of other rules that apply and a number of other laws and ordinances. But that's right off the Ferry Street Bridge, and it takes very little space to put a billboard up on a piece of dirt, and that can be worth an awful lot of money. So obviously, in this case, I'm just saying, it's not. It doesn't seem that cut and dry to me that. I don't know what value that has. I haven't heard anybody tell me that, or tell anybody that or tell me that I'm wrong. That's informed on such things. So I'm making a decision based on The manager's recommendation only here.
I withdraw my duh.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm uncomfortable not knowing what the opportunity cost is to the general public, if there is one. That's my problem, and I don't know how to solve it right now, other than to vote no. I don't want to do that either. Thank you.
Councilor Semple?
Thank you. I also don't like changing the policy of asking if anybody else wants to buy it. I didn't look like it would be used for anything until Mike brought up the billboard. It's not a tax lot. How does that work into it? How does it pay property taxes on that billboard?
Go ahead, and you can speak to it.
Well, what we've looked into is what this could look like in selling the site to them. Is we would just deed it over. We don't think I don't think he plans on putting any sort of development there that we need to create a legal water tax lot, but we could come back in the negotiating process, figure out what exactly that process looks like.
So would it just get added to the land he already has?
Yes.
And his property tax go up by $50 or whatever it's worth? I really would like to know what his plans are for it, but I guess once you buy it, that's not up to me. It's an interesting problem with it being an exception. Thanks.
Councilor Zelenka.
Well, we could direct the city manager to ask him what he plans to do with it, so that could be part of what gets brought back. Does it have a zoning?
No, it's never been. It's just remnant from the city acquired a bunch of land to create the Ferry Street Bridge, and
in 1953.
And it's just sat there ever since. It's not in the right of way.
And okay. And all right. So maybe when you bring it back, you could find out what he's going to do with it. If he's going to cut down the trees.
And
if he's going to mow.
Right. I appreciate the process question and wanting to follow the process. It does feel to me like we have a very responsible property owner who's going to take a piece of property that has been moldering there untended and who is likely going to improve it. But anyway, maybe we'll know more. Hopefully we will know more when you come back. Councilor Semple.
One other question. If you bring back the deal points and we decide we don't want them to cut down the trees and put up a billboard, would we then put it out for bid for other people and they could bid on it again? What would happen to it then?
I think if we were to bring it back and you didn't want to pursue that action, then you would have any other choice to dispose of it or not dispose of it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Clark.
I am going to vote in favor of this to allow the manager to proceed and make a deal. I am not by any stretch sold that might be a good or a bad deal to approve, or that's the ultimate outcome of the use of this property. It may turn out that we want to do something entirely different by the time you make that deal. So you should be real clear with him about that. Thank you.
Okay, are we now ready to vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, great. We are done with that. Thank you. Thank you for walking us through that. And now we are on to our final action of the night.
Mayor, this is an ordinance that's updating the public passenger vehicle code, and Rochelle will take us through an introduction.
Rochelle Nicholas, Inspection Services Manager for Planning and Development. City Council is scheduled to take action on proposed changes to the city's public passenger vehicle code. The proposed ordinance requires all vehicle for hire companies to obtain a license and all vehicle for hire drivers to obtain driver certification cards. With the proposed changes, a person intending to be certified by the city as a PPV driver will follow a similar process already in place for taxi drivers. The driver completes whatever onboarding process is required by the individual PPV company. If the driver is approved by the PPV company provides notice to the driver that they must obtain a driver certification card from the city. To qualify for a certification from the city, the driver provides the city with verification from the PPV company, which may include a third-party background check, proof of a vehicle inspection conducted by a certified mechanic, and proof of insurance. If the driver passed a background check conducted by an approved third party through the PPV company onboarding process, the driver will be issued an immediate certification. In this case, a second background check will be conducted by EPD, a process that typically takes 3 to 7 days. If a third-party background check was not conducted by the PPV company, the driver will be issued a certification upon successfully passing the background check conducted by EPD. Drivers must renew their certification process annually. Since the public hearing held on April 16th, there have been a number of questions regarding the requirements for driver certification cards. There was some confusion following the public hearing, and it feels important to stress that under the proposed ordinance language, a background check will be performed by Eugene Police. If a driver fails the local background check, the certification will be suspended, revoked, or not issued. The authority to review a driver's criminal background exists elsewhere in Chapter 3 of the Eugene Code and will remain unchanged. Eugene Code 3.011 subsection 2 states that the application, issuance, denial, revocation, and suspension of certification cards required in this chapter shall be governed by procedures and requirements in section 3.015 to 3.075 of this chapter. Eugene Code 3.050 establishes who is ineligible to hold a driver certification card, including ineligibility because of prior violations of the law. This eligibility, which is verified through an EPD conducted background check and set out in City Code, cannot be changed through the administrative rule. The business license screening requirements described in sections 3.015 to 3.075 have been used to screen taxi drivers for over 20 years. The proposed code changes retain the city's existing authority to run background checks, which will continue to be conducted by Eugene Police Department following a similar process to what is currently in place. If the proposed code is adopted, the administrative rules will be updated to include additional insurance coverage options and other important safety requirements as directed by City Council. The purpose of the proposed change is to make it more likely for TNCs to operate in the City of Eugene. I'm available for questions.
All right, I have Councilor Ye in the queue. Anybody else? Councilor Zelenka. Okay. And Councilor Surratt. All right, Councilor Ye.
Thank you. I want to thank staff. I can imagine that this process, this collaborative process, must not have been easy. We had a lot of requirements, and the companies had a lot of requirements, and the fact that you guys were able to iron all that out and find a compromise that will work for all of us, it's outstanding, and I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a great addition to our transportation model. I know myself, sometimes late at night I'll miss the bus, and that's another hour. This is just one more tool in my transportation toolbox that I can use when I need to get around town, along with everyone else who lives here who needs some more options. So thank you so much for your hard work, and I look forward to voting for this.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, we've been dealing with this for quite a long time, and why we had not done this before tonight was because of three significant things. One, we wanted local background checks. Two, we wanted vehicle safety inspection requirement. And three, we wanted insurance, so we didn't have uninsured motorists driving around our city. All three of those issues have now satisfactorily been dealt with, in my opinion. So I'm in favor of moving forward. As well, I like the per-trip fee that's been added that will create desperately needed dollars for accessibility and ADA issues for people who have mobility issues. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay. Councilor Surratt.
I have some questions. How are we going to deal with the airport licensing situation?
So the airport is already prepared. They use what's called a geofence, and they have that in place. I don't know specifically how it works, but they will be processing the companies through their business license process as they do, and they do that jointly with us. And then the geofence that is set up at the airport, it connects with the app, so they know when a driver enters the airport. Somehow the fence connects to that app and knows that they're there, and it actually will charge them a per entry fee that they charge the taxis right now. So they are prepared for that and ready to go.
It's amazing.
And then if we issue a driver their permit to drive, and then they go through the EPD background check and we find that they're not okay to be driving, how are we going to ensure that that person will stop offering passenger service?
Mm-hmm. So we will issue them it's basically, we would be revoking their license at that point, so we'll issue them a notice of revocation, and then go through our normal process of we can issue civil penalties, we can take whatever enforcement authority we need to at that point to ensure they're not continuing to drive.
And then what kind of information will we get from the companies themselves about who is being allowed to drive, and how will we prevent people from other communities driving into Eugene to offer this service?
So people from other communities can come in and drop off passengers within the city. They just can't pick up. And so we'll have to continue to monitor the drivers through the app process and through the process that we do now with taxi drivers. They tend to tell on each other when they see that. But also we'll be requiring the certifications and the licenses be placed within the vehicle. So we'll also depend on the public to be reporting that.
And then we'll have access to an audit of Uber and Lyft's drivers. So they will provide us with information on who they have recognized as a driver for them.
So we haven't worked out the details of exactly what we're going to require in the audit, but we have put into the code requirement that we will be doing an audit twice yearly, specifically through the background check process and any other records that we want to obtain from a TNC or a taxi company either. We can request those records.
Okay, thanks. I'll want to make some more comments after the motion's on the table.
All right. All right, Councilor Semple.
Thank you. Certainly everyone's been working on this for a long time, and I really appreciate it. I do want to mention that we have also heard from cab drivers and taxi cab business owners. The fear I've heard for years about Uber is that they'll lower the prices and put the taxis out of business and then raise the prices. I think that's a very real possibility, and we'll just have to see what happens. It's too bad that the taxis may not be able to compete, but the truth is they haven't been supplying the service that's needed. And we really, really need enough rides, especially at night. People want to go out drinking. We need to have a way for them to get home safely. I really like buses, but there's never enough, and they don't go late enough. So, in spite of any misgivings I have, I'm going to vote for this. One reason being that the outcry from residents has been huge, and that is our job, is to listen to what the residents want. There's also a concern about the CRO and sustainability, and that we'll probably have a bunch more cars driving around waiting to get fares. Just something to think about. We could have more gas emissions to get these more rides. But I really admire the work and the dedication that people have had for this, and I look forward to the great outbursts of joy that happen soon. Thank you.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. So I understand this properly that, and by the way, thank you. I know how hard you guys have been working for a really long time. I understand this properly that third-party fingerprinting will be part of the safety test.
So the city has never done fingerprinting?
So that's a no, you're telling me?
No, yes.
Okay. Number two, I wish I understood the system of this better, but my understanding is that taxi cab companies currently provide a service in combination with, I want to say with LTD, with regard to rideshare as a service for folks who are differently abled and or elderly and not able to get to, are not as mobile as they need to be, and have cabs fulfilling that role in a subsidized or low-income way. Do I have that correct? That's a role cab companies currently play?
So my understanding of it is that LTD contracts with some of the taxi companies to provide services for folks that qualify, and they do get a subsidized cost for that. The challenge with that is that they're not accessible vehicles. There's only one accessible vehicle for taxi.
So who will those folks who are differently abled and elderly be counting on to get them the places they need to go?
So right now they go directly through LTD, but
Let me say that differently. When the cab companies are gone, who will pick up that slack?
We're not sure that the cab companies are gone, so
I'm speaking colloquially that the reality is this is a disruptive model, and it's what our community wants. That's clear. Most people want it. But there will be a price. There'll be a consequence, and this is going to be one of them. I would think that it's going to get arranged in a different way. But I'm concerned because nobody's planning for that, and nobody can tell me what that way is right now. And that's challenging to me. This was a part of the conversation early, and I'm challenged that it's not addressed with this. Thank you for. I'm generally in favor of this as an idea. I'm almost always in favor of the idea of innovating, as the manager and I have talked about many times. And there's almost no example in American history where the vast majority of people wanted something and it didn't eventually happen. There's like no example of that. So it's going to happen. But I'm still concerned that we may not have worked out all the details that we probably should just yet. But be that as it may. Thank you.
Okay, we ready to put do you need any other comments? No? Okay, we ready to put the motion on the
No, but I will. I move to adopt Council Bill 5183, an ordinance concerning public passenger vehicle services.
Second.
Okay, Councilor Surratt wants to speak to it, and so does Councilor Clark.
Yeah, thank you. And Councilor Clark spoke to some of what I want to say. I know many people, including many in this room, work diligently to find ways to amend our code to accommodate this new industry. And I believe our staff has worked to meet the stated goals of many on this council to make sure these changes don't undermine public safety. However, I'm still not convinced that providing easier onboarding for new drivers that provides for a gap between receiving the go-ahead to start picking up passengers and when our EPD background check is done is sufficient. And I'm not going to support these changes. Not because I think we should be protecting our existing taxi industry over a new kind of service provision, but because I believe we have a responsibility to ensure the public safety when using a taxi service, and I do not trust the companies that are currently operating in this industry to conduct themselves with the due diligence I feel this community expects. Neither Uber or Lyft has any interest in promoting the health and well-being of our community. They are not going to be reinvesting their enormous profits back into Eugene and Springfield, and they have little motivation to ensure that their drivers are complying with our revised regulations. For example, they can deal with very high turnover rates with their contingent workers if those who sign up to drive don't pass the EPD background check. I understand that this is a service that many in our community have been clamoring for and even feel entitled to. I know that I'm a minority viewpoint on this issue. But I want to take a moment to say that when we embrace this new regime of contingent workers who bear the entire cost and liability in providing their own vehicle, and out-of-state corporations sucking money out of our community, we pay a cost. It might be an invisible cost, in which current taxi services go out of business, or a more visible one with increased congestion in locations where lots of Ubers are waiting to be called into service. So we might get that almost instant ride service for a few dollars, and that will be a benefit for those getting those rides, but it will come at a cost that is borne by others in our community, and we should not pretend otherwise. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, you also wish to speak?
I do. I'm not quite where Councillor Surratt is. I have the concerns. I have stated all of them. I'm not sure that I'm completely convinced that this covers safety sufficiently. I know there'll be costs like I just mentioned, that there's an awful lot of people who count on a system that's built and is functioning for them right now that's now going to be disrupted. And they're those who are least able to find an alternative. And I think we have, if this passes, we had better do a darn good job in trying to help with that as best we can. But I also recognize that tomorrow is happening sooner than expected. And this has taken us quite a while to get to, and the vast majority of people in our community would like it to occur, and they'd like it to happen now. So I believe that I will likely support this, but in a guarded way. We always have the ability to come back and alter the ordinance in the future, and I will likely want to review this. I'm not even sure I wouldn't want to make an amendment to give it a sunset, so that we can have some manner of review for the pieces that create issues. I'll wait to hear the rest of my colleagues address that before I'd make that motion.
Anyone want to speak to that? Councillor Zelenka?
And Councillor Evans.
And Councillor Evans.
I agree with everything that Claire said, except for the fact that, and it's not going to be that long before all of those drivers that are making minimum wage and having all this liability thrust on them are going to be completely replaced with an autonomous car, and which presents a whole new set of issues and problems. I don't like this business model that Uber has set up, and in fact, I deleted my Uber app and when I go on business trips. But having said that, I think our society has made this choice that this is the way they want to go, and they're clamoring for this. And while we don't have it absolutely perfect, I don't know that we ever do get anything absolutely perfect. We can tweak this as we go along, but there are costs that have been enumerated here, but there are benefits. There are junk drivers that will be off the road. There are probably a lot fewer greenhouse gas emissions because people won't buy cars. And there'll be a lot of extra money that people would spend on cars that would be spent in the local community. So there's benefits on one side and costs on the other side. It's a different model. I don't particularly like it, but I think it's something that we need to do and move forward with.
Councillor Evans.
Do you remember what year we started on this? Was this like 2015 or something like that?
Model T. 14.
Yeah, in terms of where we are now and looking at the other cities in the state who have this service, we don't have this service. We're the second major market in the state, and I think that I understand Councillor Clark's concerns, but LTD is required by the federal government to provide services for folks who are, otherly abled. That's part of the reason why they do subcontracts with cab companies, as well as also having or have had RideSource in the past. I think they've got another vendor that they're using now. It's time that we started to move this forward, and if they break it, we can fix it. You know, there's always, it comes back to the loop. If there's some loophole that's in this ordinance that, you know, something is going awry, that's what this body is for us to come back, fix it, make it right, and tighten it up. I mean, one of the reasons why we voted 8-0 3 years ago not to allow them to come in here was because they didn't want to play by our rules. Now we have them at the point where they are playing by our rules because they want to be in this market. So I strongly suggest that we move forward with this. Make sure that, you know, we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But as someone also pointed out earlier, in 10 years, these cars are going to be driverless. Truck drivers will be obsolete. Most of our vehicles will be picking us up in some form or another, and we'll be punching in on the phone. So I think that we need to join the rest of the state of Oregon and most of the rest of the United States, and let's go on with providing services for our constituents who want those services.
I just want to chime in here. I just came back from a trip to Charleston, and I had a cab driver who drove me to and from the airport. And as I was leaving, going back to the airport, we were chatting, and he said to me that he is grateful that they have Uber and Lyft in Charleston because he's a driver and he likes to go out to dinner and drink some wine with his wife, and it enables him to take an Uber or a Lyft and not worry about it and risking his license. So just want to point out that there are people who provide an intersection between these two things, and it's a happy one. So are we ready to vote? Yes? All in, the motion's already on the table. It's been seconded. All in favor of the motion on the table? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed, 1, and it passes. Thank you very much. And we're done.
Claire, if you're going to try and take